Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
Jessica, man,
How
woman,
are
it's good to see you.
Good to see you, Nick. I haven't seen you in so long.
It's been, man, I think it's been since the first year of Create Purpose at that place in Manhattan Beach, probably.
Yeah, I think that was the last time I saw you. That was one of your fundraisers, I think.
Absolutely. And since then, you've been tearing it up in Malibu, raising a lot of awareness, going viral in some cases for some really incredible work you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, super cool. I'm gonna just go ahead and introduce you to, get started. I think I'm really excited. This is our first talk with purpose, where we're being intentional with the people that we speak with. Jessica, I know we've been watching each other's journey for a long time. I think it was in 2017 you started a 501c3 for the rescue of animals, specifically dogs and cats. But I've been seeing you, and I know it's been way more than dogs and cats.
Yeah.
If you wanna, yeah, what happened? So talk to me real quick. Boomer's Buddy's been around since 2017, but for some reason I feel like you've been in chaos for a lot longer than that.
Chaos is the perfect word for it. Yeah, so I've been doing rescue work for years and independently volunteering for different organizations, and then started my own and with another person in 2017. And you learn along the way. You learn, you make mistakes.
Yes, we do.
You have to kind of ride the waves. And I uh, just aligned myself with the wrong person at the time, and so we went different ways. And so I maintained the nonprofit. I changed the name per our agreement. And then Boomer's Buddies Rescue was formed. And so yeah, and since then it's been dogs and cats, but I've also taken on some other animals as well, currently chickens and all.
Well, it was specifically for the name Boomer, right? That you really blew up. You really went viral. I know you went down to Florida. You were featured on the Dodo. I think that was the first time you really blew up for the rescuing of Boomer. Was that correct?
Yeah. So I rescued Boomer.
Hmm.
He was in a shelter for 4 long years, and I saw him. I'm out in California, and I saw him and decided to rescue him. So I flew out to Florida and brought him back with me to California. And a lot of people follow that journey. And the Dodo picked up the story, and Boomer went viral.
What was so unique about it? Why would they pick it up? What was so
His
different?
yeah, his story about being in the shelter for 4 years and coming out of that super resilient. And he is an incredible dog. I was really worried when I rescued him. I thought I was going to be getting a crazy dog who had severe
Mhm.
behavioral issues, and he just needed out of the shelter. And he's great, and he's super awesome. We've bonded um, along the way. He does have his
Oh
quirks, but
yeah.
every animal, every dog does. But I think his ability to just love life after he got out of the shelter, and he's
Hmm.
great with kids. He's great with
Hmm.
animals. He's great with dogs, cats, kittens,
Hmm.
chickens. He's
Yeah, anything that finds its way through your household, it
yeah.
seems like.
And I think people were just so shocked to
Mhm.
see this dog that was, suffering from like severe kennel crazy and going spinning in circles and going nuts, to then be coming out of the shelter and, going on hikes and, living the life and
Yeah,
going to the beach and
that Malibu
that
life.
Malibu life. Yeah. I
Uh-huh.
started taking him to schools around here and talking to
Mhm.
the children about caring for animals and being respectful of animals, and talking to them about my nonprofit. And he would come with me, and he loves the children. And so I think people really loved seeing that story of like before and after, and him in the shelter.
Mhm.
And so
Can we talk a little bit about that, the education of people? So at Create Purpose, you touched on a couple of things. You touched on the resilience of boomers specifically, and I kind of want to get into that a little bit later. But it seems like we focus at Create Purpose on children, and we focus on education because we specifically know that education really is what's going to change the future. I mean, through the skills that we give the future generations. So you went to schools, and you go to schools to sort of impart that wisdom, because it would seem like if the rescuing of dogs and cats has no end unless you're informing the people, unless the people change its ways. I mean, is that what are you seeing as far as like society? I mean, is that what you're doing? The intention is going to the schools.
Yeah. I think, realize our nonprofit deals with the current situation that's happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
But, every organization should be looking at how to not have the current situation happening, and
Right.
to, realize that there's other factors involved in how we got here and why we're solving this particular problem. We've got to get to the root of it. And, children are our future,
Yeah.
and community, and really involving yourself in your nonprofit within the community, and making sure that it goes full circle, because I don't want to keep doing this forever.
Yeah.
Like, exhausting. And we don't want this many animals in the shelter. So you have to involve the community in order to, kind of make it come full circle and make sure that you're not just tackling that's in front of your face right now.
Yeah, right. Well, you spoke about the root, to try and tackle the root problem. What is that when, so for you specifically, and with Boomers Buddies, what is the root problem?
I think it's a lack of community understanding of the importance of taking care of their animals, and also, the root is our state and governments not implementing laws and not enforcing laws that are there, and they're not enforcing them for whatever reason. And this,
Don't get me banned, girl. Don't get me banned off Instagram. I'm talking about.
I know.
And
I know.
what is?
Yeah.
And what was that last point you were gonna make?
Just having it come full circle, I think, and and just trying to tackle a bigger problem with community effort, because it's how are we getting to this problem? It's community, it's government, it's people not understanding the ramifications.
Mm-hmm.
That is the root, and then we have like the stuff that's happening in front of us and what we're trying to rescue our way out of, and there's no way that we can rescue our way out of this. There's no way.
And it's so community awareness, a lot of it is, I mean, sometimes they don't even know it's the problem. And I know, I mean, that's what we're seeing with Great Purpose. I think that's where our, people, once they know it's a problem, it's babies and puppies, But let me ask you, so I do see you, the dodo, you went viral a couple of times. I know some of your clips go viral, and you're always out there in the community. You're always out. I see you on the red carpet. What is that balance as a founder between you actually rescuing, you building that network, you building your impact, and you growing that, versus you needing to be almost a social media influencer? You need to stay in front of the public. You need to be in front of the community. And these days, maybe it's not going to all the events, but it's posting a couple of times a day. I mean, we do our best, I know, to stay relevant on social media, but it's exhausting on top of all the other things just to support your impact. How have you seen, like, what's your journey been like? How have you seen the impacts, whether it's been through donations or volunteers, when views and engagement go up? Like, do you see the dollar amounts go up? Do you see your Boomers Buddies being able to do more?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's come a long way, and it's certainly changing every year, and it's certainly changed since when I first started. When I first started, I don't even know if I had Instagram, and now it's like such a crucial part of an organization, running an organization, and it's exhausting. And quite frankly, it's, it's kind of annoying sometimes. I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to have to post, but, I think we live in such a visual world and such a digital world that compelling messaging creates, your stakeholders, whether it's your
Yeah.
donors, whether it's your people being interested in helping and donating and volunteering. And without that, it's hard. It is hard. I would say like 80% of our donations come through Instagram and social media and Facebook.
80%.
Yeah. And then the other 20% is through grants. We're constantly, applying for grants. But yeah, you have to continuously stay relevant in order to stay in people's minds and in order to garner donations. And it's unfortunate, but that's the case.
Yeah.
But there's also like the compelling part of it too, which is awesome to be able to create a video and say, look what you helped us do, and look at this before pictures and after photos of animals and their recovery. It is nice to be able to share that with people and to share that with our.
So true.
Yeah, and I know that must be really hard with you because you can't really do that with children, otherwise it's exploitive.
Yeah.
And it's becoming.
We try not. Well, it's funny. It's interesting you say all that because we tried at the beginning, and we don't show faces, and when we do, we blur them out. But I think it's before it used to be like a burden to want to have to share our story with the community. It was almost taking up so much time to stay relevant on Instagram, to do all these things. And it wasn't until sort of a mind shift on we get to connect these people with these really great hearts who want to give back in the most effective way. We get to connect them with Create Purpose programs because they probably don't have the time, but they have the treasure. They probably don't. They're probably working 40, 50 hours a week. They probably, have children, and they're so lost in the lives of their children, are not lost and excited about that, and they want to help orphan children, and we get to connect those dots. Where I think before, it was just like that. It was like, man, I got to post another, 3 times a week, 3 stories a week, it becomes exhaustive. And I think when you have the right people on the team, plus the right messaging, and then that mind shift was huge for me, wanting to connect the audience as opposed to just needing to tell our story.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And like you said, you're turning your stakeholders into the heroes, and it's not a brand that's the heroes, it's everybody behind your brand. And I think that's really important. And it is great to show that, but it is exhausting because it's always changing. The social media is always changing. Now it's YouTube, that is like everyone's encouraged to have YouTube or podcast. And
what percentage are you seeing your impact, the actual in the rescuing part of Boomers Buddies, and your time and the organization's time having to market, what percentage? Is it 50-50? Are you able to do more impact than marketing, or no, you're splitting your time evenly almost?
Probably splitting my time evenly, almost. I also work full time, so it's
okay. And
I do have board members that help with a lot of these things, but you still have a say in it, and you're still so it's constant. It's constant, but yeah, I would say 50-50. And it does get tricky because you're dealing with live animals, and so that's always takes priority over anything. And people are like, "Where's an update on this?" And like, oh my God, like we're trying, and I used to get so not offended, but I was like, but now I understand is that people are invested in the story.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you're dealing with live animals, it's like that's priority over.
Well, here's my elephant in the room, and I know what's coming. And so I think I could never understand. So I was living in Redondo Beach in Los Angeles County. So, always coming down to orphanages, trying to give back. And it was so frustrating because it seemed like that community really cared, solely about trees and puppies, and trying to pull them down to care about children. For me, it's just a no-brainer. If I can save a puppy and if I can save a child, I'm always going to save a child. And we've had this conversation a little bit in the past, but like, how is it that, I mean, kudos to you. You've committed your life to this. I know the hours you've put into this, but why not kids? Like, well, yeah, just, I mean, I know you do support, the children also, but like, where are you seeing, what is it for you?
Well, let me remind you where we met. We met at a
Yeah, absolutely.
so,
Absolutely, you do spread your love a lot of places.
yeah,
Hmm.
I had to limit my empathy because I was like,
Hmm.
there's I don't care about everything anymore. Like it's too, but animals is my passion. That is where my heart and soul lies. But I think I can understand your frustration, and I can understand your it's difficult, and I think this ties. I think it almost kind of ties back into the visualization part of it and
Hmm.
the digital part of it. I can post an animal suffering, uh, and people are like, "How can I help?" Or people
Hmm.
want to help. It's
Hmm.
so like immediate results when we are able to get that animal in, and
Hmm.
the same thing with trees. People are kind of they go out and they see these beautiful areas and they're being chopped down and people are angry and that garners a response and
Hmm.
I don't think that people don't care less about children than they do about animals. I just think that it is animals are so in your face. Like we can post these
Hmm.
images. I could post an animal, not me personally because I don't like to post like super graphic stuff, but people will post an animal that's like got hit by a car and it's like everyone wants to jump to help and
Hmm.
in your case it's a little bit more difficult because you can't post that so it's it's you have to I think you and people in your specific or not even dealing with children but just in organizations that are dealing with like future based or not so much concrete current right things that are happening in this specific moment that
Hmm.
document you guys have to get really creative on how you reach that
Hmm.
the market.
It all comes back to marketing, doesn't it?
It does. It
Uh, I mean, it really
does.
does.
Because it's the world that we live in. Look at social media. I mean, it's like now it's like 60 seconds. Now it's not even
Yeah,
60 seconds. You got 15 seconds. Will
yeah.
somebody in and ask for help, and it gets difficult. And I think I think people care about children. I think it's so in your face with the animals.
Well,
Or
yeah, in LA, right? I mean, in LA, I'm sorry for interrupting, but it's such a bad, I mean, the system there as far as like shelters and I think it's like and how often they're getting killed and all that stuff. I mean, in LA, it's almost like it's worse than most places, or no?
yeah, no, it's awful, and it's really disappointing, and it's really embarrassing, and it's
Hmm.
really considering that this is Los Angeles. It's considered to some the greatest city in the world or in the United States, and some say it's fourth largest economy or it's headed that way, and we have these horrific conditions in the shelters, and it's like it does that. There's such disconnect and like it just doesn't make sense. And some of these shelters are near near neighborhoods where there's like $1 million homes and like just it's weird and it's awful. And I think that just going back to community based and trying to get your message
Hmm.
community and whatever your message is and
Hmm.
whatever you feel like is important. Yeah, I think there's a lot to it, but also there's a lot of nonprofits in Los Angeles, especially doing what I do, and there's a lot of new rescues popping up and a lot of people wanting to help, which is good. But it's also a little frustrating, and it's
Yeah, it's
also
a lot of saturated market, and there's a lot of saturation, right?
it is it's a saturated market, and I would say that I think if I would have, I think hindsight 2020, if I would have known what I know now and I have a different mindset, I yeah, I think that there's so many, and I think that there's a lot of egos involved, and I think that people want to start their
Ooh,
own, do their own thing, and be the hero instead of joining forces. And I think that's where there's also a lot of, a lot of where, how come we're not moving forward how we should be, is because there's, a million cooks in the kitchen with a
yeah.
million egos and a million different ways of how they think that should be done, and no one is moving forward together. And I think that is a big issue in any arena where there's a lot of
Hmm.
going on. But and I'm talking about more specific to the rescues in
No,
Los
the
Angeles.
nonprofit space, that is super. I mean, that's what it is, a lot of ego. And it's funny because it's the kind of ego that sneaks up on you, and I mean, I can't tell, comment on your story, but on mine, it was recognizing that ego, having already started it, being already years in, and being, as patting yourself on the back and being like, wait a minute, like this is, there's a lot of ego, there's a lot of flags, people wanting to put their flags on the ground when it takes a while to learn that, though. It takes a while to learn that someone's built it before you. How can we take that, iterate it, and make it better? And that we all don't need to be CEOs, and we all don't need to be founders, and we all don't need, and but I think it's sexier to do that, and we know a little bit about marketing, so we want to get our message out there. And I
Yeah,
think, yeah, it was about 3 years into it where I really had to check the ego and say, oh man, this isn't mine.
yeah,
It's not had nothing to do with me, almost, because without our incredible donors, without our incredible board, without these incredible orphanages that are allowing us to partner with them, then there is no us, and there is no impact, and then we're just lost in this purposeless rat race, if you will. I mean, so yeah. I mean, was there well, why don't a couple of things. Well, why don't we lighten it up a little bit? Why don't we lighten it up a little, getting away from the ego, getting away from kids versus animals and all that jazz? I mean, there's stories. I'm sure you have a lot of stories, from fundraising to craziness, because you do put yourself out there in social media a lot. You are in these weird places. I've seen your feed, and there you get yourself into weird places with these rescues. I mean, right? So, is there anything that you remember, some funny things, some crazy stories that you have in this Boomers Buddy time you've been hustling?
well, I mean, I feel like I've reined it in a little, but I crazy stories, of course, there's always crazy stories. When you're dealing with people, and people who like animals, there's a lot of passionate people involved, and whether it's doctors or your volunteers, the board member, it's all, there's a lot going on. And I don't have any like super crazy stories per se, I don't think. But there's been times where it's been really difficult, and I've been like, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? Like, why do I care so much? And I want to flip that switch off of like
Have you
care.
figured it out? Have you figured out why you care so much? Have you taken it
Uh,
back, or when it was that you started to care so much?
yeah, I mean, I've always, I mean, I since I was a child, when it comes to animals, I've always been very heavily affected by animals, and their suffering and wanting to help them. So I don't think it's something that's ingrained in me. It's not something that I've like, you know, like some like hobby that I've taken up. It's like, it's something that I was born with, and
Hmm.
what I was put on this earth to do, and it's what
Yep.
brings me joy. And it's the only thing that, quite frankly, I know how to do right. Everything else, I feel like I, I feel like it's imposter syndrome, and I'm just like faking it till I make it through life, with everything except for this. This, I'm like, okay, I know that I do this well. Everything else is just, um, you know, hands, my hands in there, and I'm like, I don't know, I'm just kind of winging it. But
Yeah, just going through the motion, just adulting like the rest of us.
yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, yeah, as far as crazy stories, I'm sure there will be some, and but none that probably I can't really talk about, because
Yeah, I was gonna say I won't bring up the ones that I know. Well, let me ask you this. So you have a couple of programs. You have a senior program. You have for older, I believe older animals. You have a financial care for medical crises, and you have your your normal, for boomers buddies. What's the one that people most gravitate for? What are you seeing most people wanting to donate to? What is the biggest need?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, the biggest need is animals that need help.
Hmm.
I think, what I found was I wanted to rescue senior animals, and because it's heartbreaking, and they're in the shelter, and we don't know how long they have, and it breaks my heart. And there's a lot of people that care about the seniors, but not a lot of people who wanted to adopt them because they were fearful of the costs that come with adopting a senior animal. Any animal is costly, but you add on senior care, and that can be more, a little bit more intimidating. And so we started our senior program with the Magnus Legacy Fund. Magnus was a 21-year-old cat that we rescued. He was only with me 3 months, but it was the most amazing 3 months, and he was what helped me come up with this fund. So now we have been trying to fundraise for and have a set amount every year for senior animals that we take on and that we adopt out. And when we adopt them out, we provide a medical stipend to the adopters. And when we did that, we had so many applications and so many people interested, and they were like, yeah, we'll help, now we'll adopt. And so that was great to learn, and so now we're trying to, do a little bit of that as well. But it is a costly program because it's a medical stipend each year. So it's, we can't, take on too many of those types of cases, but we're taking on a few at a time. And yeah, I think, people have been so amazing and so generous and just wanting to help, any animal, whether it's a kitten or a dog or cat. I will say though, Nick, that cats are harder to fundraise for than dogs. And I'm not trying to compare cats.
Well, yeah, that sounds. I mean, I was just having the conversation that cats are so just fussy and like you know how cats are. Dogs, they love you all the time. Of course, you're gonna love puppies and kids, puppies and babies,
I know.
and
I know.
kittens.
So I feel you when, you're like, it's hard to fundraise for children. It's hard to fundraise for cats. Dogs, it's like so much easier for. But cats are, there's some misconception about cats. Cats are cool and they're awesome. But yeah, and so we also wanted to provide back to prevent, these animals from going into the shelter. And a lot of the animals, I will say the majority of the animals being turned into the shelter is because they're is medical. The owners can't provide the medical costs, or they can't provide the medical needs.
And it's a death sentence, right?
It's a death sentence for the animals. Yeah. And so in order to kind of tackle that, that's where we have like a medical grant that we give to people that we can help their animal, and they can keep their animal. They don't have to bring them to the shelter and drop them off and surrender them. It's people that truly love their animals, and everyone here is one paycheck away from being homeless, and they can't necessarily afford $100 procedure or $1,000 procedure. And so that's when, if we're able to, we can step in and say, great, we'll cover that cost. And and so that way we're kind of helping the community, and we're not just helping the shelters. So yeah.
Hey, just let me ask you this final question. I think I get asked at least once a week. People will ask me about nonprofits, starting a nonprofit, going down that path. I think we have a very similar answer when it comes to this. But yeah, let's say, especially a lot of young people, they're entering the job market. Instead of entering the job market, they want to enter the nonprofit. They want to be founders of nonprofits. What is some advice that you would give, not even just to a young person, to anybody who's looking to start a nonprofit, to start something, their journey on purpose-filled work?
Yes. So I, what I would, first thing I would say is don't. I would say
Don't do it.
don't, not,
Don't do it.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's a very labor intensive,
Hmm.
and here's the thing is like if you're offering something super unique and super different than what is already out there, or if you're trying to tackle a problem that is not really broached too much, like in your case, you know, I think aligning yourself with an already established nonprofit and helping them and one that you can, you know, align yourself with. And that was my thing when I was volunteering with different nonprofits. Some of them I, you know, I was really invested in, and then I was like, ooh, they don't, they're doing some like weird stuff, and I can't get down with that, and so
Hmm.
I have to, you know, move on. And you know, and yeah, my ego got involved, and that's when I was like, I'm gonna start my own because I don't like to do. And then, you know, I like looking back, I wish I would have just, you know, nobody's perfect, no organization is perfect. I think if you can align yourself with a nonprofit, or at least really have somebody mentor you and take you under their
Hmm.
wing,
It's good
and show
advice.
you and have you cover different aspects. Because here's the thing is like nonprofit, like when you're running a nonprofit, there's so many aspects to it, and no one person is great at everything. No, and
Hmm.
that's very, when people think that, or you know, it's that's very ego driven. No one is going to be perfect at everything. So understanding what your strengths are, understanding what your weaknesses are, trying to help an already established nonprofit that you really, you know, can get down with, um,
Hmm.
and yeah, and you know, unless you're really doing something that is truly unique or different, then I think it's, you know, when people are fracturing off and doing their own, I think it's, you know, I think the intentions are great and the intentions are good, but I think, you know, when you're younger, you don't realize, you know, you're just you're the there's already very limited resources, and you're
Hmm.
dividing those resources further, and it gets hard. And you know, there's that saying, if you want to go quick, go alone, and if you want to go far, go together. And
Hmm.
I think going together is the best way to do it. But you know,
Well
yeah,
said.
so that's my two.
Well said. Well said. I appreciate it. Is there anything that you wanna shout out? You wanna promote your channels?
um
What are you doing?
People like animals more than children. No, I'm kidding. If people love
They do. I'm telling you.
I'm just kidding, Nick. If people, you know, like animals, feel free to follow our Boomers Buddies Rescue. We predominantly save cats and dogs. And yeah, and you know, thank you for all you do. And I know we both have feel the grind, and we know
Amen.
it's a crazy journey out there. So thank you for doing what you're doing for the children. I really
And
appreciate
and thank you for all the love you put out in the world. Appreciate you.
you.
Shout out to you. See you soon.
Thanks,
Talk
Nick.
later.
Later.
Thanks all.
Thanks for
Thanks
having me.
for joining.
Bye.